Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of our Women's Connect panel series. We have the lovely ladies from Her Galaxy and the game Hers. Hello, ladies.
Hi.
Hello, good evening.
Happy Wednesday to everyone that's watching, and happy Wednesday to the ladies that we have on the panel. Super excited to be able to talk to you all. You all are trailblazing within this industry right now, and I had to make sure that we had a panel with some of the ladies that everyone knows, to say the least. So thank you so much for taking time to be a part of this panel, and I am super excited to have us get through. So first and foremost, as most of you know, my name is Justice Miranda. I am Director of Operations for Gaming Community Co. We're a nonprofit that is geared to helping BIPOC communities get into the gaming and esports industries. And I would love for us to go around and do some introductions as well. So Verta, we can start with you.
Hello. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me. My name is Verta Maloney. Pronouns are she, her, and I am one of the co-founders at the Game Hers, and I also do, all things that have to do with innovation and where we want to see the company and the movement going in the future. I don't know, is there anything else that you want me to share? Everyone might hear a dog in the background at some point during this, so I apologize in advance.
Maybe, how long have you been working with the Game Hers?
So we actually, this month is our 3-year birthday of our official launch. We've probably been doing it for probably about 3.5, maybe a little bit more than that, as far as coming together as a team. So yay, happy birthday to us. And so, yeah, so that's exciting. I've been in the workforce and working in the world for much longer than that. The other thing that I do that kind of is a great intersection between my work here at the Game Hers and what I've been doing my whole life is work around anti-racism and anti-oppression. And I work with lots of different companies and entities, and I'm sure we'll dig into that a little bit more as we go.
Awesome. Rebecca, we can go on to you.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Dixon. And I am in New York City. You might hear there's a huge siren going by right now. And I am CEO and co-founder of the Game Hers. Really excited to be here celebrating Women's History Month. And like Verta said, this is our 3rd birthday. Honestly, almost like exactly today we launched.
Wow.
In 3 years ago. So this is a wonderful celebration. And I'll mute myself while the other intros happen, because can you guys hear that? Probably. Yeah.
Fine. Awesome. Yeah, Steph, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Steph Lechman. I'm Senior Talent Manager at Galaxy Racer North America. I've been with the company since September, so just about 7 months, but been in the gaming space for about 3.5 years now. My duties here, it's day-to-day talent management. So what that really means is working on individual brand deals, content collaborations, events, tournaments, PR, career growth, pretty much everything under the sun that a talent would need on a day-to-day basis.
Awesome.
And I can jump in. I'm Megan Holgate. I'm VP of Partnerships with Galaxy Racer North America and Her Galaxy. Very similarly to what Steph said, we're a very small team, so it's kind of everything from A to Z. Primary focus is bringing brands on board to support everything that we have planned coming up across our tournament series, across our talent, really everything. And so such a pleasure to be here, especially with you guys. We are just huge fans of the Game Hers and everything the community is doing. So thank you for having us.
No, thank you, ladies, so much. I would like to let everyone know that is watching our stream currently that we will have a Q&A section at the end of this panel. So we will be having a couple people dropping in the form link for you to be able to fill out questions. I can't say that every question will be answered, but we will choose a few questions for us to answer towards the end of the panel. So please make sure that you are filling out that form during our panel. And I would love to actually just get into, what are the missions of your companies? And Megan, maybe we can start with you. Like what is Galaxy Racer? How does Her Galaxy fit into that? And what are some of your key missions and goals for this year?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll try to do that in a nutshell. So Galaxy Racer is a gaming org that was founded a couple of years ago, based in Dubai, massive abroad. We're actually newer to North America, but at Galaxy Racer, we were the first and still one of the few gaming orgs that is gender balanced across all esports teams, across our entire creator roster. So that is a huge priority for us. And that's where Her Galaxy comes in. Her Galaxy is really our platform and our initiative to support and empower women and underrepresented genders across gaming, across esports, and really across the creator space as a whole. So our goal is simply just to create opportunities for women to come to the table, to shine, to compete at levels that maybe they haven't had the opportunity to join a community of women, so that they can drop into lobbies with friendly faces, friendly voices, and really just create that positive, supportive environment and community that we all want to see happen.
I love it. That is so awesome. Rebecca, what about you? And, I mean, either one, Verta or Rebecca, speaking to the game Hers and, for your 3-year birthday, what is the ultimate mission when you all started this? What were you all thinking? Was it in the basement of a room of like, we need to create this, or, give me the story?
Yeah, all origin stories have something. All of my origin stories usually involve cocktails. And so I will definitely say that there were some cocktails involved. And we had come together, a few of our founders. I think Rebecca was actually in the room at a meeting with, like, I don't know, one of these like big kind of banking businessy financy groups in New York City. And in the room, there were hundreds of people, and mostly men, talking about esports being the next big blah, blah, blah. And this was like, what, 4 or 5 years ago? Like, what are we going to do? How are we going to get involved? And then looking around, they were like, yeah, but like, where are all the women? Because we know that there are women in this community. And so for us, that was the beginning of kind of thinking about, with all of our backgrounds in like community building, why are there not, well, we all know, we can talk about that ad nauseum, why there are not enough women in this room having this conversation, but also what can we do about that? And so we just started really interviewing women across the globe, just talking to them, asking them questions that were gamers, that were in the video game industry, developers, like all of that, and asking these questions around, what is it that you want? What is it that we want, right? Because I game and stuff like that. And so what really came to the surface was, it's a given that we are going to suffer certain disparities, that there's like lack of equity. We'll talk about these things. And we want to be elevated and amplified. We want, when someone's deciding that they want to make a new gaming chair, we want to make sure that our voice is at the table, and it's not just like retrofitted in pink, that they haven't considered us ergonomically or anything like that. We want to be able to have a space that feels safe for us to go to, where other people are going to want us there, right? And not to what was said, not go into a lobby that's going to be so hostile. And so from there, we decided that we would focus on community and build a community network and lifestyle brand that centers, elevates, and amplifies women and femme identifying gamers across the spectrum of gender identity. We've worked with a lot of people to talk about how we say this. It's really important to us that we don't want to exclude, but we want to make sure you know who we're centering when you come to our space, right? And centering does not mean that the other people have to be excluded. It just means that you know that that's who we are. And so that's what we did. And we have then since created lots of different initiatives, and like kind of the big ones that we're known for are the Gamers Awards. And it was so crazy to us that like, whoa, there's not an awards show that we get to like nominate and do all of those things on a larger scale. And so we decided to do that. And we're going to go into our third year of that. Is it 3 years? We're going into our 4th year of the Gamers Awards, which is like a really exciting thing for us. And then thinking about all the ways to engage the community and just creating as safe a space as there can be for women. But also the big thing for us too is beyond even just playing the video games. What we say a lot is the video games is what brings us together, but the conversation that takes place like goes all of these different places from there. And for us, very specifically, how to get more women into careers within the industry is like super big for us. And we have our boot camp that's coming up soon that's about that. We can talk more about that, but At the core, yeah, just centering us, because women are, I don't know if we can curse, so I won't until someone else does, but expletive awesome. And we need to be elevated and amplified in this space.
Amen to that. No, 100%. And like even maybe we can talk about some of your backgrounds prior to getting into gaming, because for myself personally, I never thought about gaming as a career.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people do think about it, but something that community prides our mission on is you don't have to be a gamer to work in the gaming industry. And there are so many different levels to how you can get into the gaming industry besides the main things that everybody sees. You might see the actual game developer, you might see the publisher, you might see the characters, but what about the people that are behind the scenes, people like myself that are in operations, people that are in marketing, legal, all of these different things, because the gaming industry is so big and billions of dollars are within this gaming industry. First and foremost, how many women are getting a piece of that pie, let alone how many women are following their passion within that industry as well. So what I would love to ask is, because I think that this is something that all of us that are within the gaming industry, we battle on a day-to-day basis, but especially women, because we have such a high demand on ourselves personally. Like even if somebody else isn't putting that demand on us, we have it in our own mental, like I have to be the best, I have to be a superstar, I have to be a rock star. How do you balance that, knowing that the gaming industry and how we work is so fast paced? We're always on another meeting. I always say that to myself, if I don't block out my just 2 hours every day just to actually work, I would be on meetings all day, every day, 5-6 days out the week. So how is that for you? How's work-life balance? Is there work-life balance? But also, how do you keep that prioritization for yourself?
Is that for all of us?
All of you, yeah, whoever wants to bite first.
Okay, I'll start. And I kind of actually struck work-life balance from my vernacular many, many years ago, decades ago, dating myself, because I think that it's about fulfillment and that there's never going to be balance. Whenever somebody thinks of balance, they think it has to be like 50-50 or, 25%, 25%, 25%. Like that's just impossible. And so I just like to challenge people to say, it's not about balance. It's about, am I doing the things right now that are going to fulfill me? And an example I use is I have 2 children. They're much older now. But when I was a school principal at one time, and I remember going into school one day and I did not see my son. He was little at this time. So I didn't see him when he woke up because I left before like 7, and then I didn't see him. So I didn't see him all day. And I was like, that will never happen again in my life. Like, and it was because it was important to me. I'm not even judging for other people. That might not have struck anyone else as like, okay, I can handle this because I'll see him tomorrow. That's fine. But for me, I could not go a single day and know that I was working in a way that made it so that I could not see my child. And so I then at that point said, okay, how do I make sure that I'm focusing on the things that bring me joy? It doesn't mean that they're easy every day, and that some days I don't want to like somebody, but that bring me joy. And that sometimes I'll have to give more to work than I can to making sure that there's like food on the table that I cooked, right? So then we're going to order out, like Grubhub's going to get all of our money. But I'm not going to feel bad about it. But because I think society tries to make women feel bad if we can't do all of the things, but they won't make a man feel bad if he can't do all of the things. And that's just a fact. Like that's not, that's just a fact. You hear a lot of men that are in really high powered positions thanking their family and I want to thank my wife because she raised the kids. Okay, well, I want to be able to feel fulfilled in all the things. And so for me, it was being really clear on what those things were. I wanted to spend time with my family. I always want to do something that I feel is going to have an impact in the world beyond me, right? I'm always thinking about what will my legacy be? And when when I'm no longer working, or when we look back, like what will that be? I want to have ease and abundance in whatever I do. And I don't believe that things have to be a competition. I operate from an abundance mentality. So those are like 4 pillars for me, that if those things are not happening, then I'm like, okay, then something's out of whack here and I'm not feeling fulfilled. So that's a strategy for me. And I do exactly what you do as well, Justice. I have like blocks on my calendar that are just, it says Verta time. Just, I don't know what I have to do, whatever it is. Maybe I have to eat, maybe I have to use the bathroom, maybe I'm gonna take a nap, maybe I just need to like stare at the space for like 12 minutes, whatever it is. But I definitely put that into my calendar as well. So those are some of the things that I do.
No, I'm with you, Verta. I think you nailed it, at least from my perspective as well, because at the end of the day, I don't believe that balance can happen. We're not showing up at 50%. I think the best advice I ever got was years ago. Sarah Hardin, who's now with Hello Sunshine, I think, actually said, you can't be 100% of everything all at once, right? Like you can be a really great mom today, or you can be a really great boss, or a really great colleague, or a really great wife. You cannot be all of these things all at once, right? And if you have that expectation of yourself, to your point, Verta, there's nothing good that can come of that except frustration for something that isn't even feasible, right? So I think for me, it's about that, the awareness of that, the acceptance of that, prioritizing, to your point, any given day, what needs to happen, and just knowing that I'll have grace with myself, I'll have grace with others, and patience, and know that everything will equalize in the big picture, right? Like everything will balance in a way, just not everything all the time, all at once. So I think for me, very much the same. So Verta, I know you're in the same, but it's like, okay, to be a wife, to be a mom, to be all of these things also in our career, I think the first thing that tends to go for me is that me time. So I love the idea of blocking the time, or, just carving out a window to work out, carving out a window to go for a walk and connect with family, to talk to a girlfriend, and fill up your own cup a little bit, right? So that then you can continue to pour back into others, because this is a wild space. It is fast, it is busy. There's always a lot happening. And that's what I love about it. That's what brings most of us a lot of joy about it. But kind of remembering to carve out that time and reset a little bit is incredibly important.
I love that.
I think a lot of how I would answer this question has already been covered by the two of you. I like the analogy of a seesaw, in terms of, just keeping it ultimately balanced, but never exactly, flat, because that's not attainable. And then I think also just really trying to give myself, some grace. I have three kids, 2 daughters, and a son. They're 13, 11, and 6.
Wow.
So, I've got a lot going on with them. And the same daughter who at one point wrote in an essay for school that they had to write about a superhero. And she wrote this amazing essay about that, I'm her superhero because I started a company and I'm a great mom. That's the same daughter also who, like the day I read that was like, you're never home. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to, I'm a big meditator. So that is one of my tangible tactics. I just meditated on, but I'm also her superhero. It's like, it
put it on your wall.
What it is. Yeah. And, there are a lot of little tips over the years that I've picked up, and I don't always effectively use them, but I try. In my situation with 3 young kids, I get up absurdly early in the morning because it is the absolute only time of day that I have to myself. I attempt to block 2 hours, but I'm actually not very successful at that, because I schedule things in it often.
Yeah.
So that, that's something that after years of knowing that is a really important tactic, I still personally haven't maintained that one really well. So I think it's also just knowing that we're always going to be navigating that, balance, but if we are really striving for actual balance, we're probably never going to get there. So finding some peace on the journey is what I try to do.
I need to take some mental notes.
Okay, right.
Because a lot of my career, I've always been like, yes, I can do it. Yes, I can finish it tonight. Yes, I can get it done by tomorrow. And I've experienced a lot of burnout in the past where I got to a point and I'm like, I can't even think or look at work for the next week. So I have definitely not been great at taking time for myself, but I've been making slow progress. And I just remind myself, which is kind of a little weird, that I'm not saving lives at the end of the day, and that if it can wait until tomorrow, it can wait until tomorrow or the following work day. But I've also found that a key to not really looking at it as work-life balance, is working with creators and individuals that become friends and become as close as family. So that way, when I get a call or a text on weeknights or weekends, because I do work with talent, the nature of a talent manager role is being available 24/7, 365 days a year. So when I get a text when it's not technically working hours, I look at it more so from the frame of, oh, like, what's going on? How can I help you? Instead of like, oh, this is work. I have to work on the weekend. So that's where I'm at today.
No, and I think I'm right there with you, Steph, to where, to be honest with you, before going into the gaming industry, I have always worked in fast-paced spaces, you know, like it being in entertainment prior to coming into the gaming industry. I was before working with talent. I had worked with like the Bravo, Real Housewives, and that to me was like very, very fast-paced. But I never experienced burnout until I came into gaming. And I think it's because the community doesn't, like, when I hear people say like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do a 24-hour stream, I'm like, why? What is the happiness that you get from this? But it's because you love this, it's your passion. You can see yourself doing this for 24. Of course, I've stayed up for 24 hours for a project or for work. Shout out to Essence last year. Like those are things that of course happen, but some people do this voluntarily. Of like, yeah, I'll just spend my weekend or spend my birthday doing a 24-hour stream. I'm like, kudos to you, you know? But I think that culture is also what contributes to us having that mentality as well, is like, they wouldn't go to sleep or they would still answer this email and I think I had to get out of that mindset, right? Of like, even though they might do it, does not mean that I have to do it too. And it's okay for me to, just like you said, Steph, like that's really where I'm at now. It's like, if it's after a certain hour, because I would be the one that's responding to emails. If you're sending me an email at 10 p.m., I'm still responding, no matter if it's until midnight, and then I'm only getting a couple hours of rest. But I can say I responded to that email last night, and then I'm sitting here and I'm like, but was it worth me losing on sleep? You know, so I like that balance situation. It does not have to be a balance to where the seesaw is here, but at least, and you know, even when you said seesaw, Rebecca, I was like, in the analogy of a seesaw, it's like you always get back up, right? Like there's always going to be a point where you're going to be high and you're going to be low, but either way, it's still going to be a fun activity if you think about it in holistic aspect. So I might actually take that seesaw analogy and be like, yes, I'm right now here, but I promise I'm going to be right back up here. So I'm gonna steal that one. But even knowing that within gaming, and I would love to hear a little bit about how you all got into the industry and what you were doing prior to gaming. And is this your first role in gaming?
I'm happy to jump in, Justice, because we have a little bit of overlap. I was in entertainment adjacent for a long time, longer than I care to admit. But I spent about 15 years in social and digital and influencer marketing, primarily within the entertainment space. So working really closely with brands to help build out campaigns, holistic 360 campaigns that supported their goals and that helped them connect with an audience and build that kind of brand love across their target audience. So did that for years and years while casually being a Fortnite gamer, like terrible, but big fan. And I ran into a role at TSM that they were looking for the head of partnerships to kind of run the account team for existing partners. And it just kind of felt like worlds were colliding, where I could take all of my experience, you know, in client management, in brand activation, in social activation, and influencer marketing, and bring it to the gaming space that I loved on a casual level, but similarly to what you had said earlier, Justice, hadn't considered as a career, and that was missed opportunity on my part. So a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to join TSM and ran the partnership team there for a minute before I left and was able to join FaZe, which is actually where I met Steph and a few others. So I was with FaZe for, again, about a year. And through Steph and our current head of talent, Spencer, I learned about Galaxy Racer. And it felt like everything coming together. My experience for years in entertainment and social marketing, the experience I had across TSM and FaZe, coming full circle to a space that is all of the things that I love and supporting women in a space that I love. And it just felt like it was going to be a perfect fit. So I've actually only been here for 4 or 5 months now. So still getting up and running in a way, and it also feels like not up and running at all in other ways, but it's been great, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can go. So my story is fresh out of college. I was working in advertising. I was running digital advertising campaigns. At one point, I helped open up the LA office, and I was alone in the office, a co-working space. So I had a lot of time, just me and my computer, and I would watch YouTube on a separate screen because I love YouTube. That's my main form of entertainment. And one of the channels I would watch a lot was FaZe Clan and some of the FaZe Clan talents YouTube channels. And so I got familiar with them, but not through gaming, because the extent of my gaming was playing Mario Kart and like Mario Party, Monkey Ball with my brother growing up. So I'd watch them and I was like, what is this? And when it came time for me to look at another job, I came across an opening as a talent coordinator at FaZe Clan on LinkedIn. And I was like, I don't know, should I apply? Like, I don't really know anything about gaming, but it's a cool opportunity. Like, I want to get into the space. And so I applied, and I actually almost didn't go into the interview because I was so nervous. And I was like, I can't do it, but I did. And I ended up getting the job, which was awesome. So I was a coordinator there for a year. And then after the year, I started to get my own talent. So I worked with talent over there for 2 years. And then our head of talent, Spencer, he was also at FaZe Clan. He called me once he got the job over at Galaxy Racer and was like, Steph, you have to come over. It is so great. We have so many initiatives around women and a really, really strong female focus. And that's all I ever wanted and all I ever rooted for in my previous role. So it was literally a no-brainer. And here I am 3.5 years later. I absolutely love Twitch and watching all of our talent. And one of these days I will become a gamer myself. I just haven't gotten there yet, but I love the space and I love consuming it.
We'll get there, Steph. We'll get there. I'll stop playing Bejeweled pretty soon, and we'll get there, you know? Yeah.
Exactly. Or not. I think that's also the beauty of the space, right? Like what we had mentioned before, you don't have to be a gamer you don't have to actively game or, to be in a space. And I think that, I love your story too, like that you almost didn't go to the interview or you were so nervous, because I think that those are the moments where, you're onto something, or it was just really meant for you to have that thing, right? And I have like I've only been in the video game industry, or I have been, I don't think only is necessarily the thing I need to say. I've been in for 3.5 years with founding the Gamers, right? So that is what's brought me into the space. I do feel like there was worlds colliding though for this to be what I should be doing right now. And I think that's like an important thing, like just following the things that are important to you, just like what I said before, like will kind of lead you there, right? And so prior to being here, like I started off, I was a teacher. I've been working for 25 years at my first job, I've been working for more than 25 years. I've been working since I was, for like 30 years now. My first job was in a mailroom when there was no internet. There was no, like literally it was a mailroom with a conveyor belt. And like we did super ridiculously unsafe things, like opening envelopes that looked suspicious. We had like, so if it looked suspicious, we just like put it in a little bin, and then then each of us was designated like that day, whether we had to go and look and figure out where it's supposed to be. So we're just like in some random room opening suspicious mail. Okay. It was the worst. It was terrible. And I was the only woman in the mailroom. And so
Wow.
It was crazy, the things that I encountered, the things that I heard, like just the treatment that existed. And so that was before I went to college, and then I became a teacher. And I was a teacher. I was a school principal. I started my own elementary school.
Wow.
And that story is very connected to this, because as a principal, I remember one day there was a student and he got into a lot of trouble, and he was getting into trouble all the time. And his mom brought his gaming console in and was like, just take it. He can't have it anymore. He's like not acting, he's just like not behaving at school. And I was like, I'm not sure if that's what we want to do. Right. And I just kind of was always the advocate for like, maybe it's not what we want to do, only because I feel like that's an outlet for some people, right? And so let's find a different way as opposed to taking it entirely away from them. And so I've always just been a person that wants to advocate for individuals, and oftentimes those that the systems typically marginalize, right? So as a Black woman, I worked with all like Black and brown students. That's where my school was, in the South Bronx. And then I trained leaders, people who wanted to start their own schools. And so I've worked with a lot of like amazing people who were former principals that like now, you know, Jamal Bowman, he's a congressman now, but he was one of the principals that I supported and worked with. And so I've just always like had this passion for helping people see their dreams come true. And a lot of what we get to do at the Gamers is exactly that, allowing people to see that all the things that they've done in the space actually do matter, that you've created a community, whether it's on Twitch or your, you know, your YouTube channel or whatever, that there's a lot of importance that happens there. And that that sometimes you are actually saving someone's life because you decided to stream one day and they were like listening to what you had to say, and it was just because they knew you were going to be there. And those things are so important to me. And I think the other, like, where my worlds collide is that I've always been, you know, social impact, social justice, that's just where my heart lives. And I think right now we are in a moment where it is the just and right thing to do to make sure that women, as we're in an industry that I would say is relatively young, right? Like video games are not young, but the video game industry is.
Yeah.
That we have a really great opportunity to make sure that it does not continue to replicate all of the other industries that exist in our world. We have such an opportunity. And so to be here at this moment, I think is like really impactful and really pivotal. And how do we ensure that by elevating women, that we are being as inclusive in that endeavor? Because I think we can just like lead the way in so many ways. So ending up here was because I have two companies that I run, and about like 7 years ago, I just decided I didn't want to work for anyone else anymore. I wanted to work for myself. So in that endeavor, pulling all of the things that I do together to be able to like found the company with Rebecca. So I don't know if I answered your question at all, but I was like really riffing off of what everyone else was saying. So
no, that's awesome. That's what it's about. Understanding your background. How did you get here? So yeah, I love it. Rebecca, what about you?
Yeah, I love hearing everybody's story because it's you know, we're a microcosm of the industry as a whole. The pathway to careers in this industry there are so many pathways because it is a young industry, and like there are so many different jobs that exist in this industry and so many ways that we all got here. So my path is in college I majored in math and music. And I just mentioned that because who would have thought that had, you know, necessarily anything to do with getting me to where I am today, but they are still two of my passions and loves.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I went, after college, I was a media buyer, and then I worked in ad sales at totally traditional, you know, corporate ad sales. You know, I'll date myself as well. It was ad sales for 30-second TV ads, and that's where brands were advertising at that time. But it gave me a strong background and passion for how brands, you know, work and think and demographics and look to find their consumers, which is something that is, you know, always more relevant today than ever, especially as I think Gen Z becomes you know, really an important group of people who are interested in various products and out in the marketplace. So that kind of comes full circle to some of the stuff that we're talking about as we're thinking about women getting jobs in this industry. But I left the corporate world completely quite a while ago and have been an entrepreneur since. And so before the Gamers, I was a part of a company also building community around women, and it was in the parenting space. So while building community for expectant and new moms, and tying in brands to that may not seem totally similar to building community in the gaming space, there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, as we think about community is such an often used word these days, but as someone who's been building and nurturing and you know, studying and creating communities for a long time, I'm really just thrilled to be doing it in an industry where, like Verta mentioned, video games have been around for a long time, but our industry is still sort of defining itself, and how wonderful to be on this discussion right now, talking about, women and how we can be an impact.
Yeah. And I think that I love how, especially because the gaming industry is so young, essentially all of us would be able to say that we had careers outside of the gaming industry before this career, because it is such a new thing as far as, just like you were saying, the industry specifically, not to say video games, but also including women in the video game industries is something that's new as well. And I know in no way is this panel about me, but even just to give my background, I was working at 14 years old. The first time that I got a job, I went door to door. And I think that that's also like just a story about how like women have the initiative. But I went door to door knocking. My mom at that point, she was working 2-3 jobs, single mom, more power to her. And I was like, I want to work as well. And she did hair on the side. And so I was like, I'll go to salons because I want to sweep up hair. It could just be that simple. And one lady, her name is Arlene Spratt, she gave me a job, my first job. And I worked that job up until I graduated from college. So every time that I would, which I went to Clark Atlanta University, but I'm from California. So every time I would go home for summer vacations or winter vacations or anything, she would allow me that opportunity to come back and still work and get money. And so just want to say, first and foremost, shout out to women giving other women opportunities when a lot of people would not. First and foremost, I don't think it was actually legal for me to be working at 14 yet. But we're not, we're no shade, Arlene. Shout out to you for hiring me. So during that time, that was like, when Facebook was just new. And so I set up her Facebook, I set up Groupons, I, did those things for her, which then led me into saying, if anybody could do the exact same thing that I did, for me, it was working for somebody that eventually, not to say I wanted to run a salon, but I wanted to be in her shoes. She was a full-fledged entrepreneur. She had been having this business for years. And I was like, I love what she's doing and I would love to help her any kind of way. But then also giving me the inspiration to say, I would love to start something on my own. So my senior year of college, that's what I did. I started an on-demand personal assisting company. And I was accepted, the company was accepted into Comcast, the Farm Accelerator here in Atlanta, Georgia, and Comcast bought it. And I was like, what? Like so surprised. Like I'm 23 years old. I just graduated college and I'm like, no way, like this can't be real. There's so much more that goes into the story of how after that I felt like just depressed. What do I do now? Where else do I go from here? What else is there to do? And thank God for the entertainment industry. Genuinely, I would like to say thank God for COVID, because that I think is what also put a lot of things into motion for women being just having a level playing field for gaming and esports. And that is how I got into the industry. But when it was known to me that there were communities that were not involved in the gaming industry, that sparked a thing for me. I was like, if someone else gave me a handout 12, 15 years ago, I would love to do the same for someone else. And so it's kind of like that pay it forward model that I think we all have, but especially women that are in this space. And I would love to ask that question to you all. You both have amazing organizations that are building communities. You're always giving a handout. You're always making sure that someone said yesterday that I'm going to kick the door behind me as I'm going through the door to make sure that somebody else can still come in through this door after I have gone through it. How is that for you? I already know that there's gratification, but what was that like for you of knowing, hey, this is a community that I'm genuinely trying to make sure that there are equitable opportunities for, but also a space that it might be a little bit difficult. And I might be that one in the room that always will speak for a woman. Like, well, are we thinking about the woman demographic? Are we thinking, how is that? Is it uncomfortable at any times? And also, how do you overcome that within a male dominated industry, knowing that you're creating a community and a safe space for an industry that normally would not do that for women or certain genders or even certain minorities as well?
Woo. Well, that's a
I
big
know,
one.
heavy, right? Heavy.
I think I really appreciate you talking about, what was her name? The woman that gave you the opportunity to work at the salon, because
Yeah.
what was her name?
Arlene.
About Arlene, because I think that I do think it's a little bit of a misnomer when people think that women were not in the industry. I think it was just that women were not in prominent roles and or given the opportunity to be, I think, making money in the industry, right? And I think the same thing can be said about Black, Indigenous, and people of color, right? Like culture of like when you look at like video games, the culture of Blackness exists in there, right? Like the music, different things like that. It's just that those people did not get their due props or the opportunity to be, you know, an investor in said company or the person that's like making the game. So I think that for me, and when we think about the gamers, we think about like all of these organizations that came before us that have been doing this, like all of these entities, whether it's Black Girl Gamers, whether it's Wiki, Women in Games International, whether it's like the list could go on. Maybe it can't go on, but it's there's a list,
There's a list.
of a group, right? And then the other thing that I think is really often missed is that when video games themselves and like game development was happening in its inception, right? In the 70s, let's say, there was more equality then around the number of women engineers that had an opportunity to actually participate in that process than there is now. You see, like, it's just kind of crazy, right? But that actually did exist when it was like kind of, there was more equity. And so for me, it can be really challenging to kind of know that history and then to see like what has happened and where we are when it comes to, I want to say, the money that's made in the industry. I want to say the talent that is given the opportunity to be at the forefront of this industry. And while I almost feel like sometimes I'm in a bubble and I'm like, oh, it's changing. But then I remember it's like this, it's changing, but it's the same group of people that I always talk to that are doing it. And then I look out of it and then I'm like, wait a minute. Are we really making those strides that we need to make? So that can be extremely frustrating because what that then creates is people approaching those of us that either are, you know, gamers or are people that are in the industry that are women, like they almost think that we are an anomaly. So they're like, oh, well, I play video games all the time and I've never played with a woman. I literally had someone say that to me, a man. And I was like, I'm like, how would you know? Like, I'm even like, first of all, how would you know? Like, but then that's just such an odd thing to say, you know what I mean? But I think that there is, and I think it's a belief, right? Like that exists out there. And so for me, it's a struggle sometimes to have to be combating that, right? And one of the things that I do try to do, I was just talking to some people about this today, is if I have an opportunity to make sure that a panel that I'm on or an opportunity that I'm given will include another Black woman or another woman or another, you know, Black, Indigenous, or person of color, like I am now asking those questions, like who else is going to be on the panel, or what other things are happening here, because I have an opportunity to do that. That's my one way of like starting to combat that, because it should never be a situation where you should never have a panel and there's not a woman on it. I believe you should never have a panel and there's not like a Black, Indigenous, or person of color on it. Like I can't even, like that doesn't even make sense to me. But trust me, if you go to sessions and things, it still happens. So that's one thing. And so I just believe that there's more good in the world than there's not. And that's one way that I battle it. And my motto is I get appropriately angry. Like I'm all love with appropriate doses of rage. I tell people this all the time because there's things that make me upset and I just let people know, no, that's not cool. And that makes me angry, and then figure out a way to channel it. And then sometimes you just need a break. I'm just going to say it, like we talked a little bit about like balance, fulfillment, all of that. And sometimes doing that all the time, sometimes you just need to take a minute and like not do it all the time. So that's my like 17 cents.
And I can follow up a little bit on what Verta said. I think some things that we've seen at the Gamers specifically that we try to, you know, to do to sort of alleviate challenges around this topic are, you know, Steph, you mentioned earlier, COVID was offered opportunities for women to, you know, have more access to opportunities in the industry, right? And I think you're spot on. And I also think that a side result of that is that sort of group of organizations or group of women that Verta mentioned are suddenly like, you know, the women who do all the things in the industry. And so it sometimes that can even lead to a level of questioning success and value. So we saw a real need about a year ago to make sure that everybody was getting paid. And so we make a big point of paying people when when we're working with them in any capacity. I think that's a real core part of our mission. And it's important across every single part of the industry. It's important for the top, streamers to be getting paid, and for professional esports, but it's also important for everybody. People who are, just doing anything anywhere. And women are, it seems to be the case that women are asked to do things for free quite often in this industry. And it's interesting. So that's one thing. And then I think another thing is just sort of giving more visibility to women in every corner of the industry. So developers, streamers, collegiate space, and it could even be just simple things like, certainly we do this at the Gamers, but also, those of us who are on social media personally and sort of out there in the world, just forwarding things and retweeting things and trying to make sure that all of the incredible people in this industry are seen. And that includes women.
I love it.
No, I love
And
that.
I'm actually, Steph and Meg, I was actually going to ask you something more directly. Knowing that you work a lot with talent and partnerships, how does that look for you all? Like and I won't get so into the weeds and you can answer it as you please, but like what type of clients do you want to work with when you're thinking about a partnership, or what talent, what qualities within talent that you're looking to hire? What are some of those qualities? I mean, I'm sure some people are watching right now, like, I would love to work there, or I would love to be a part of that partnership or talent bucket that you all have. So what are some key things, knowing that you do work for a woman-led organization and in a certain capacity? How do you look for partnerships, talent in that way as well?
Yeah, I can kick it off. So I actually get asked this question a lot when we talk to agents or talent. They're always asking, like, what are you looking for in a talent? Like, what type of game do you want them to play? What type of qualities do you want them to have? And the short answer is, we don't care. We don't care what games you play. We don't care what you do on your free time, as long as it's appropriate. But what we're really looking for is really awesome talent that have great personalities and that are really behind our Her Galaxy mission. We are signing a lot of females, but we also have signed 2 males, and one of them is a father. One of them is just a strong supporter of women. So what we're really looking for is just quality people. And I will also add that we'll always have our core gamers. We are a gaming organization, but where we're headed and where we're separating ourselves is signing talent that have full-time gigs outside of playing video games. So we signed a professional NASCAR race car driver. Her name's Natalie Decker. She's awesome, but she also plays Valorant as a means to connect with her fans and to really interact with them. We signed a professional soccer player who plays Call of Duty in his off season. We signed a former contestant of The Voice who now owns her own business and is looking to tap into streaming. So we are not only looking at gamers, but we're also looking at creators across a variety of verticals. I've been seeing a lot on Twitter that a lot of actors and actresses are tweeting that they're playing games, which is awesome. And that means that they have a place at Her Galaxy and Galaxy Racer North America, which is really great.
Yeah. And I'll build on that, because I think Steph nailed it on the talent front, is just genuine individuals that are all men, women, non-binary, doesn't matter, like all aligned with the mission in some form. And the same goes for our partners, right? You guys kind of mentioned it earlier, where we actually had a conversation with a brand, or at least early on in my time with Her Galaxy, that told us they didn't think that there was a problem in the industry. They didn't think there was an equity problem. And we all collectively hung up and regrouped internally and just said, okay, that's not the right fit, right? And like that's okay, but it's not the right fit for us. I think we're looking for brands that want to come to the table and such a buzzword, build an authentic partnership, right? That are in it to build something holistic, that want to reach this audience in the right way that could bring value, and vice versa. We want to be able to build partnerships where we're giving value back to the brands with brand partners that make sense. So it definitely, Steph and I work extremely closely on all of this for obvious reasons, because there is, a level of vetting to it, and also just wanting to make sure that it's the right fit for our talent and the brand and what we're trying to do in this space. But yeah, I think across the board, and just to tap into what y'all were saying right before this question, it comes down to amplification for us too. I think we're so grateful that being new to North America, we had already had the chance to meet Verta and Rebecca and talk to the Game Hers. We've, had conversations with the Women in Games International team, and everybody with the Radiant team over at Dig. Everybody is very much in this is an all boats rise situation, right? Like, what do you have coming up and how can we amplify it? Like, what talented creators are out there that aren't on our roster that just did something amazing that we can support and amplify and retweet and just get the visibility that should be there. So, and coming full circle, that is what we're looking for in our brand partners too, right? Like, we want them to be invested in the space holistically, not just, although we would take it, not just one of our talent, but really what we're trying to do as an industry.
Yeah, and I think that's a major point. Just in general, with I think both of your organizations, amplification is huge. You won't know an issue is there until it is amplified, and you won't know that there are ways to fix it until you amplify the fixes as well. So I would love to know from your perspective, understanding that you haven't always been at this specific company. How does this company differ from other companies that you work for, knowing that you have at least an entity that is specifically woman focused or minority focused, to where you are building this community because you are one of that community. But maybe before this, you were not building that specific community, or there wasn't that hyper focus or the attention to the fact that there is a lack of representation. How does working for the Game Hers and Her Galaxy differ from your past and previous roles?
I can start in that it's something that I'm creating. So, you know what I mean? So there's a unique perspective there in that I decided that I didn't want to work for other people because there was so much of myself that I had to leave when I went to work. I had to leave that behind. I couldn't show up as my full self or as full of myself as I wanted to be, right? I think that, and because it's a company that I have founded, there's an opportunity for me to do that. So I don't want to say to people, oh, you can go off and be your full authentic self everywhere. You literally you can't. Like, you have to really, really be a judge of that. And you have to know that in some places it's just not going to be prudent or safe for you to do that. But I encourage everyone to work to find the places where you can go to work and feel like you can be as full of yourself that you want to be at work. So for me, that's one of the differences. And I'll just use kind of an anecdote, in which is talking to someone on our team today or yesterday, I can't remember, because really, what is time but an illusion? I don't even know what day of the week it is. But they were saying that they felt really grateful to be at a company where they could say that I'm not feeling well today. Like, I could literally let you know that, and know that the team was going to come in and just we got you, we can figure this out, right? And I know that, there's Murphy, that I've definitely worked at places. I literally left a job where I had to go to a board meeting that morning, and I was going to be late. I had to drop my child off at school. We had already gotten to they're school age now. We got to the part where I'm not going to not have a day with them. And I said, I'm going to be 15 minutes late because I have to drop my son off, and I think there'll be a little bit of traffic. And my boss said, well, nobody really cares about that, so I expect to see you there on time. I was like, well, I'm not going to be on time, and I'm probably not going to be working here much longer. But that was literally just how it was. That was, and so for me, that's a difference. That's not the environment that we are seeking to create at the Game Hers. And I actually took a course. It's called a feminist business planning course a while back, when I was deciding this, and just kind of made a vision for some of the things that I wanted, and how it's just interesting that as women, we have an opportunity to create business that does not mirror oppressive patriarchal systems if we so decide. because we just show up. And I always say 80-20 rule. I don't like to generalize women, but I do think that the ways that we move is a little bit different. And so that's what I'm leaning into. And so I feel fortunate to be able to have two companies that I'm the founder of, where I get to actually create that.
That's awesome.
After very many years of like being with bosses like that, like what I just said, like that's your problem.
You created the safe space for yourself. Awesome.
I think one thing I can add is that when you're creating a company that is, quite literally centering a demographic that you are a part of, some things that are just intuitive to us just happen. And that's not just at the Gamehers, but it's something that we can all, I think, strive towards in our industry as a whole. And there's a great story that one of our early advisors of our company, you told us early on in the game, and she was leading a game development company, a publisher. And one year they got interviewed by the press, who said, what led to your decision to have so many games this year with female protagonists? And she said, like, literally, that it hadn't even occurred to her, but when you have women in the room, it doesn't seem strange to have female protagonists. It's like, what, and having like, so the whole, development cycle had like finished and the games were launching. And that was the moment when like the first person realized, because of the press asking them, that their percentage of female protagonists was like, higher than most companies. So it's just like, that story has always resonated with me as something like, wouldn't it just be great if, there was, and obviously that goes for representation across the board. And so, at the Gamehers, I just, like Verta said, of course, we want to create a culture that internally is compassionate, and we know we have a team of people who are working really hard. So my goodness, if they don't feel well, like, don't work, and we'll take care of it. Like, we are all human. But it's not always that. So, and I'm not saying that everything is absolutely perfect. In our culture, we always try to be better, because, certainly, we're always learning there too. But it's great to be able to feel like maybe, because we are in this demographic that we're trying to help, in some ways we actually might be able to make a difference. I mean, I'm an optimist. I think that it's great to be here today having this conversation. It's nice to see the level of progress that I think admittedly has been made over the time that I've been in this industry. And I also do think that the future is bright, while saying we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's kind of twofold, right? Because to your point, and I feel like we've said it a few different ways a couple of times, but it's because it's so integral to what we're doing at both of our orgs. Gaming is in its infancy, not gaming, the industry is in its infancy. So we have the opportunity now to literally shift the trajectory of how this is shaped. So I think that's one of the key differences, at least in my experience, from earlier in my career, being in entertainment world and studio world. There's a big difference in feeling like you're a very small part of a very big system. And there's a little bit of the, I'm a cog in a very large wheel mentality, to being where we are now, where we are literally turning the wheel, like which is the same thing, but it feels different. Like we actually have an impact, and to be the small teams that we are, trying to literally shift that trajectory is huge. So it feels very different than I think the roles that we've had in the past. And again, I've been very lucky to have a wonderful experience in gaming so far with TSM and with FaZe. But it was also a huge relief for me to go from selling a brand that had one woman on the roster of almost 100 creators to Galaxy Racer, that it was our entire mission, right? the entire goal is to amplify these voices and shine a spotlight on these women that are in this space. So it is just a different mentality. But the teams that I've worked with within the gaming space, I feel really grateful. Like I've always been surrounded by people that did exactly what you guys said, right? Like when I called in and said, hey, this happened, I can't be there today. So many people have responded saying, we've got you covered, don't worry, at TSM, at FaZe, at Galaxy Racer. And I think it just says so much about the people that are in this industry and the level of passion and the level of compassion that I've seen across the board is just really reassuring, I think, for what we can make happen in this space and the people that are helping us drive that forward. So that's been awesome.
You have all said it so wonderfully. I'm left with little to say. But what I will say is something that I really love about Galaxy Racer and her Galaxy is everyone's voices are heard. We do work on a small team, but even if it were 100-person team, 500-person team, I still think that every single voice, opinion, idea would be valued and respected. Whereas at other companies, you say an idea and it gets pushed to the sidelines. But I really feel like here we are working hard to get everyone's opinions. We have a monthly call with our talent and our production and marketing team to really just hear what they want to do, what cool content series do they want, what type of tournaments do they want to put on. And I think that's really rare, and you don't really see that as much in large gaming organizations. Is really, we just value opinions and want to hear what everyone has to say to just make ourselves better.
And this panel is different than any of our other panels this week because you all are working for companies that are genuinely specifically focused on women, which is awesome. And I think that within the gaming industry in general, I think women still are battling a lot of things that maybe specifically these companies might not have to battle. Like you having a company that is specific for women, especially women gamers, it's like, no, it's always inclusive. Like, yes, I'm always going to make sure your voice is heard. Yes, like, but what about those women that are still working for companies that their voices are not heard, or they're still the ones that are having to be that one advocate in the room and always probably getting the side eye, like, well, here goes Stephanie again, or here goes Justice. Like, she always has something to say about how to include women. What advice would you give to those women that are still kind of the only ones in the room, or very few that are in the room?
Stay strong. I mean, exactly. Yeah, keeping in mind that I just said I've had a wonderful experience, which is true. Like, there have still been times, right, where I've been in roles where I felt empowered and supported, and there have definitely been times where I felt put down and gaslit, right? Like, you're just like, is this? And imposter syndrome is real. Like, all of this is very much real. And I think for me, I just regularly had to step back and remind myself, like, my own goals and my own objectives and what I was trying to accomplish, and just honestly just say, like, to heck with it. Like, let's just keep going. Like, just say what you want to say. There's not a day that we can take for granted, especially when our goal is such a massive one, to drive things forward, to improve a space holistically. And that's definitely one of those things that, like, 100% easier said than done, right? There are days where you close the laptop and you're like, I give up. I just absolutely give up. And then you wake up the next morning and you're like, here we go again. This is going to be great. So I think you just keep showing up. And Verta, you said it earlier, you just go again and again and again. And some days you're going to be tired. And you have to just hope that you're surrounded by people that are going to lift you up and empower you and give you that encouragement to keep going. It's so much easier said than done, but yes.
Yeah, right.
I would add to it that where you work does not have to be the thing that fully gives you everything that you need. So just like, just want to say that, right? Because we're actually talking about work and like being in the professional space, but it doesn't have to be. It is okay for that not to be the place where you get to do all of that, and you decide that, because all of us don't, you know, we have to make decisions, right? Got bills to pay, rent to pay, groceries to buy, all these things. We have to make decisions. So I think one is that if you're in a position right now where you can't leave that place, right? Decide if you want to keep being that voice, and you can decide that you want to do that. And if so, make sure that you have one or two people at work that are at least your work friends. They don't even have to be people that you see outside of, but that are supporters of you in those spaces. And then lean on people outside of your spaces to be that support to you. And then alternatively, if you do want to leave, like try to, you know, create your 2-year plan. How will in 2 years I not be having to be in this place being this? I want to find the places where I can like do this, and I know other people really believe in it, or they value my voice. Like I've had so many. I had one time a woman said this to me. She told me that I literally sucked the air out of the room. And that like she didn't like because I would always be like, yeah, what if we tried this, or this is another thing that's going on. I mean, like literally said this to me. It was like, oh my gosh. I was like, that was so harsh and so awful. And it made me question myself. And what I say to people is that imposter syndrome is not about you, it's about the system. Yes, it's making us feel certain ways, but the system is what created that in the first place. So try to start to move yourself into understanding that maybe I feel this way, but I don't feel this way generally because of me. Don't get me wrong. I've had things I've had to fix. I've had feedback that I needed to take. But generally, when it comes to feeling like I'm not supposed to be here, or I did something wrong, or I just said that, and then 5 minutes later, this man said it, or in some instances for me, a white woman said this thing, and they're like, "Oh my God, that's the best idea." I'm like, I'm not crazy. That system has been built for that to happen, right? And so, how do I then either exit said system or decide on the ways that I can exist within that system? Because it's one of the other, right? Like, and you have to make a decision for what you value, and how, just basically what's going to keep you sustained. Because sometimes it can actually like make you sick physically to stay in an environment that's not working for you. So I would.
Yeah, I think my answers have already been covered. The only thing I'll add to it, if you're in a situation that you are seriously not happy in, and it's not, serving you, then you all already covered the great advice for that. If you're struggling with imposter syndrome, which it was also touched on, I heard really good advice recently that I've been thinking about around imposter syndrome. And it's like, if you're questioning yourself, like, what if I founded a startup in gaming, in the gaming industry that was to support women and community for women, and it just didn't work? Like, that's the imposter syndrome. And so then the advice is just flip it. But what if it did work? Like, what if it did? And not that can solve everything, but sometimes I think in this, in this current environment, there can be situations or days or maybe moments that just feel unbearable. And then that little piece of advice in the moment has worked for me a little bit. Like, what if they do say yes? Or, what if we can pull it off? Instead of questioning it, because I think questioning ourselves and our value is something that we have been sort of trained to do for whatever reason. So I'm trying to, on a personal level, not do that.
Yeah. Which is hard.
Yeah, you guys all said it perfectly. Not much more to add on my end. I have definitely struggled with doubting myself. But I think something that's really helped get me through that is surrounding myself with people that celebrate my success. Because a lot of times I'll do something awesome and I'm like, yeah, well, that's just, this person did that the other day, or my deal I closed isn't that significant. But having people around you, whether it's your coworkers, your friends, your family, cheering you on, that over time has made me realize that what I'm doing is really awesome and really significant.
Yeah, no, Steph, you kind of hit it on the head for me all of you did, but just what you just said, someone messaged me. Actually, a couple people have, but from the panel that we did yesterday, and they're like, Justice, oh my gosh, you were so awesome. And I was like, was I really? Like, how did the conversation really flow? Did my hair look okay? Like, I'm over here questioning myself, and they're like, no, I'm telling you, you did awesome. My mom, even totally not a gamer or anything like that, but my mom was like, I set up a Twitch account because somebody said that you're live. And I'm like, what, Mom, you were on Twitch last night? And she was like, yes, and you did amazing. And I'm like, thank you so much. Because I'm sitting here at the end of this, like, oh, I hope that I did okay. I hope the conversation flows. I hope, and I'm just being myself. Someone even, big shout out to Chris Postel, but he was like, Justin, I love how animated you are. And I'm like, really? Because some people think I'm extra. Like, so it's like, it could go either way, right? Like people just like you were saying, Rebecca, like it could be flipped where it's just like, oh my gosh, she was being so extra. Whereas other people are like, I love her energy. And it's like, I'll take the I love her energy in a day. Okay. Like, let me keep getting more of that and surrounding myself with that mentality and taking more of an optimistic approach. I like how you said that too, Rebecca, kind of flipping it. Like, let me flip it instead of saying, how doesn't this work? Or it's not going to work. And I think that same mindset goes to what you just said, Steph, of where my deal wasn't that big. I have to now do that. Like, I appreciate you both saying that because I need to start saying, no, my deal was that big. No, this panel is amazing. No, me creating the first ever Women's History Month conference for community was awesome. And I did this and I made sure that it was, see that it wasn't intentional for that reaction to happen, but I appreciate it. And see, that's the thing. That's what women do,
But it
right?
was
Like, no, please don't.
Yeah,
Right. Like, no, please
for
don't.
sure.
Yeah. So literally, okay. So we just kind of did it right then and there. So I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to thank you for the praises and thank you for, acknowledging it. Cause a lot of people will not, they'll be like, oh yeah, great job. And it's like, okay, to each its own. So I appreciate all of the responses so far. I would love to hop into our Q&A. And to be honest with you, these are the best questions that we have gotten so far. So for the past 2 days, not in any way to say that the other questions weren't great because they were, but I think these really, and I think it's because of you ladies, right? Because you are in this space specifically, we're getting more direct questions, knowing that you are a woman that is advocating for women. So one of the first questions is, how can we address unconscious bias in the tech industry, and what strategies have been most effective in promoting diversity and inclusion? So I'll just repeat it one more time. How can we address unconscious bias in the tech industry, and what strategies have been most effective in promoting diversity and inclusion? I'm like, whoever, you guys are amazing for writing these questions. So thank you.
I mean, the first is acknowledging that it exists. I think that what we have to do, and I'm going to say in tech as well as video games, is there's a lot of conversation around how it's already fair. If you just have, everyone can play a game and everyone has, you just have a console. It's not. Like, yes, that's also just a biased statement in and of itself to make that assumption. Yeah. So I think that one of the first things is just acknowledging that it exists. I think it can be hard for people. They really want to believe that it's just fair, because if we just give, gives this person a console, give this person a console, they can all play. It's just right. Not. And what that means is that we have to stop pretending as if we exist in isolation of the larger world. So the reason that our two, companies exist is because we are combating what has been in existence, which is a very male-dominated space. It's just the bottom line. And we have to just name that until we don't have to name it anymore. So unconscious bias, it's like, one of the things is you have to just start calling it out. So I appreciate the question because it means like we're thinking about that. And that's the first thing. And the second is people have to be willing to hear it. So it's one thing to say it, but are you willing to take this feedback and then do something with that information? And I think our industry at times is not always willing to, besides like superficial and surface level things, right. They're not willing to like go that step deeper and saying, okay, maybe I need to change this thing, or maybe we need to do this, or what have you. So I think that those are two things I would say to the first part of the question. And the second part, I think, is like, where are we seeing it be successful? Was that what it is? Was that what they said? There's two parts to that question.
Yes. What strategies have been most effective in promoting diversity and inclusion?
I think we have a long way to go. So I think I'm a little bit of a like, I don't know if I don't know how effective we're being yet. I think that what I will say is when I see companies like ours, when I see like Erin Ashley Simon with Xset, when I see Cxmmunity, I'm actually seeing like the leaders of some up and coming companies, like Rainbow Unicorn is a great game dev company that's out there. Like when I start to see those things, that gives me, that's where I see, okay, we're seeing the leaders of certain things and they're being backed in order to do the things that they're doing. I just don't see enough of it, right? So I think those are some of the ways that it's being successful.
Awesome.
And
I can move on.
Yeah, I can add a little bit to what Verta said. It's kind of a little bit more about what she was just talking about right at the end. Seeing the leaders of companies out in the world is important because of the whole, if you see it, you can be it. And also it feels that impactful change is being made if those humans are the ones, leading. And on a more internal level, I think at the Gamehers, and then when we're in conversations with other partners or entities in the space, it's something that, has to be a part of every decision and every conversation. And so when we're thinking about like, structure, for example, at internally, and I think, a great strategy for other companies, it's like a strategy for diversity and inclusion. I think that was how the question was worded. Isn't like to think about it over here and have a strategy. It's like to be a part of every strategy, because otherwise it's not a part of, thought process with sort of any initiative that is done.
And I'm sorry, I want to say two other things though. I think one thing that I have seen, and there's a large conversation about unpaid internships within our space and that people need to start getting paid for internships. I want to say that is like, that conversation in and of itself is like a really good one around bias, around what privilege and access gets you and all of those things, and diversity, equity, inclusion, because it's an important conversation to be had, right? That everyone can't afford to do unpaid internships. And if you can't afford that, then you don't get the opportunity. And that many people that exist in high levels of jobs in our industry started as an intern somewhere, and oftentimes an unpaid one. So that conversation is critical to this. And I think it's one I'm glad that it is happening. I don't know, you know what I mean? Progress is being made there. And then I want to say, like, this person asked about unconscious bias, and I want to like make that distinction between that and just like outward bias, out straight up bias. I think that there's a little bit of there's a then in between where things that people are calling things unconscious when it's just kind of like, I'm just trying to ignore the bias. Right. And so that's why when I said you need to just like name it, that's what I mean, right? So because unconscious means that I'm not aware that it is happening and that I don't know that I'm doing it. And that's where that second strategy of like, if someone tells you you're doing it, you need to believe their lived experience and what they're expressing to you. So I just wanted to make that distinction.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, or maybe I am. If I bring it up, then that means I am doing it. But like one of the most recent episodes of The Real Housewives, it was actually, I know, a total woman moment, I guess. But one of the Asian American women was like, you can't tell me what my experience is. Like, that is not for you to say. Shout out to the Beverly Hills Real Housewives. But that's what she was saying. She was like, that's not for you to say. If something made me uncomfortable, then it made me uncomfortable. And you need to accept that it made me uncomfortable, because it's not your experience to say whether or not it made me uncomfortable, so acknowledging the fact that people's experiences are their own experiences. And I like that, not saying that it's an unconscious bias, because that it's happening. So let's just be honest and say that you're ignoring it intentionally as well. And also the fact that, when Cxmmunity started about 3 years ago, Ryan Johnson, who is the founder of the company, he came and he was like, students, BIPOC students, specifically minority students, are not as involved within gaming and esports. How can we make this happen? And immediately it was about digital literacy. And it was like, you can have a console all day, but does that mean that you can be a competitive player? Heck no. you need to have probably a dedicated PC. What kind of Wi-Fi and internet service do you have? Like, there are so many things that then go into me being a professional within this space rather than being an amateur, or me getting, doing an internship where it's unpaid rather than me being considered for something that is paid because of my skill sets and what I bring to the table. But I can't show you my skill sets and what I bring to the table because I'm already 10, 20 steps behind of somebody else that might have already had all of this given to them when they came into the industry. So acknowledging the fact that that is there, that, that there are a lot of students like that. And it doesn't even have to be minority students specifically. There are people that just go through that all the time. And we have to acknowledge their experience and not say that this is something like, oh, only these type of people go through it. No, there are different kinds of people that go through these types of things, and acknowledging it. I love that, acknowledging it first. But then from one of the other questions, you had said you have to acknowledge it, but be around people that are willing to listen as well. So I think that that's a major thing. When we're talking conscious or unconscious biases, express yourself. I think that that is very big. Don't be a closed mouth doesn't get fed, right? And I'm not saying that I'm hungry. I'm just saying the fact that I need to eat, right? So like, let me at least speak my mind, and then whatever then is returned, especially if it is somebody that's listening, hopefully I get a great benefit after that. So I love those responses. Now, I would like to ask this next question, and this might actually be our last one because we're coming up to time. But how can we leverage technology to promote gender equality in the tech industry? And what innovative solutions are being developed to address these issues? So I'll repeat it one more time. How can we leverage technology to promote gender equality in the tech industry? And what innovative solutions are being developed to address these issues? Very heavy question, I know.
I'm like replaying the question in my head.
Okay, and
I'll answer in with one. I have one way to answer, and then it's a sort of an open-ended question.
Yes, it is.
So I think that it's important for, well, I have two ways I could answer it. I'm going to talk about the Gamehers. We have an app, and that is technology, and it has created a space for our community to come together. And so I think that it's one of the ways along that, in one of the many ways along with our awards and our boot camp, which Verta mentioned, that we provide space for women gamers, women-centered space for gamers to come together. And leveraging technology, I mean, the onboarding process for the app makes it such that it is a safe space. And, I won't go into all of the details, but in terms of, I think the question also talked about getting people more jobs in the tech industry. Right. So I think that if you don't have a place that where you can even have sort of that network of people, and not that the Gamers app is only about that, and not that it's the only place to do it, but it is a place that provides a community to use as resources and support in this industry. And there's also a big overlap between people who play video games and people who might want to work in the video games industry, right? And so just creating places and spaces for those people to know each other and support each other, not block each other out, and also even know about jobs that are open, because I think our industry seems very daunting if you want to work in it. And yeah, I'm talking, I guess, a little more specifically about the esports and gaming industry rather than just tech at large. But that's one sort of piece of lived experience of tech as a solution, but there are certainly many.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think lean into the communities that are being built, lean into the platforms that are available, right? Like find the Gamehers app, find the Her Galaxy Discord, go on LinkedIn and find the groups and involve yourself, invest your time into it, and kind of find that the right path for you. I think holistically that doesn't like change the landscape, but on an individual level, it's one way of kind of leveraging what's available to us and being 1 foot closer to wherever it is you're trying to go.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would say is, I mean, I don't know if it's a little bit of a hot take, but being a little less, take more risks and be less, within our industry. I find that like when we talk about things like Web3 or we talk about things like blockchain, like people don't want to have that conversation, but knowledge is power. I'm not saying that you have to go off and do it. You have to go out and create an NFT. You don't have to believe in any of that, but trust me when I tell you that you have to know about it. And so leveraging technology to promote gender equity or any equity at all is making sure that people know what this stuff is. And I think it also requires us to go lower as far as like, it's not just about us, like who have a career and a job right now, middle school, high school, elementary school. It's like, really, how are we doing that? Right. And I think that that's number one. I think if we can, and in those spaces, some innovative solutions are being created, right? I think that the things that blockchain can do, we don't talk about that enough in the video game industry, because it can provide access to information. It can provide a place to store information that's actually safer than what we do right now. But because we're averse to the technology, or like, we don't want to know about it, we hate NFTs, they're not all the same. So all I'm going to say is that that's one way to create equity, because while our industry is young, the video game industry, the Web3 space is even younger. However, it is already being filled with people that don't look like those of us that are on this screen right now, that are making decisions, that are creating the spaces. So find, there's a couple of, there's Her House, there's a couple of really cool spaces where there's an organization called, I don't know how to say it, CERES, that's just like trying to help women and think about this space and what it means to be there. So I just want to, that was what I would say, be a little less, don't be so closed off to some ideas because you maybe had a bad experience with it. And then that's what I would say.
Yeah. And I think also, like there are a lot of negative stigmas when it comes to some of these newer things or technology in general, because it is kind of like the world of the unknown, like when the Jetsons came out, and I am so not that age where I was watching the Jetsons, but I know that was a thing, right? But when the Jetsons did come out, that was like, people were surprised that there would be like a microwave, like, oh, I can have food. And okay, but what about the air fryer now? Because that is my jam. I love a good air fryer, going ahead and putting something in it. And next thing you know, something that usually would have taken an hour is taking me 20, 30 minutes. Like, so all of these things, and then even when the microwave came out, it was like, oh, well, no, don't stand by it if you're pregnant, and then radioactive, and so many things that everybody was just so scared of. And it's like, okay, well, what about the metaverse now? What does that mean for our kids? What does that mean? Are we about to be in Ready Player One type of lifestyle where we're all living in these? And so everybody is scared, and they're like, well, no, I just won't get my kid a VR AR headset. And it's like, well, I don't know if that's the way that we should go about this. Maybe we should talk about how we could, use this as something that, is then more of a meditation tool, more of something that he or she can build a business off of this, So I think there's different ways for us to think about it from a technology aspect, to where, like you were saying, Verta, that you're not scared of it. Let's at least be knowledgeable of it. Somebody even wrote in the chat, ignorance is not bliss, like we just need to know about it, right? So we are officially at time. So what I would like to ask is one last question. And I haven't asked this one yet to previous panelists. So I think that this would be awesome to hear from you all. But what would you tell and I'm going to give a more realistic age, what would you tell your 16-year-old self? I think at 16, at this point, you kind of have grown to a certain point of you're mature. You might not be talking back to your mom as much. I mean, I know some of us still were, like myself, but maybe I have a certain type of maturity of myself to where I know what I want. I know I want to go to college. I know there are things now that I am just a little bit more ready for, those bigger tackle type of conversations, and also kind of gauging what I want to see in my life and my future, rather than me asking you about your 11-year-old self. You would be like, I want to see, like the new Barbie doll. I want to have the new Barbie playhouse. Nope. Let's think 16, 17-year-old self. What advice would you give to yourself then?
I would probably say take risks and follow your gut, because it'll get you here today and you'll be very happy. And I wouldn't have gotten here without going against things that my parents said, or leaving a stable job to get into the gaming industry, which was kind of a questionable time back then.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful that I took those risks and didn't listen to what other people told me to do, because it got me here.
Yeah, and women's intuition is real, right? Like when you have those gut feelings, or when you have that thing that just keeps saying, and you're like, okay, I hear you, but it's like, no, your body's like, I'm still not listening to that thing. No, you have to listen to that thing, because women's intuition is real. I love that.
I'll go next. I would tell 16-year-old Verta that she's the special sauce. I think we go through life thinking that it's a certain job that I want, or once I do this thing, but actually it's you. You're the special sauce. So wherever you go, take you with you, and like really lean into all of the things that you're really good at. And the things that make you feel awkward or weird right now are the things that are going to be your greatest gifts.
My team knows me, so if they're watching this stream, I do not want to get any text messages, because I literally am about to cry. I'm like, you are talking to me. I am the 16-year-old self right now. Like, yeah, no, that's awesome. I am the special sauce. We are the special sauce. I love it.
I think I would say, actually really similar to what Steph said, if you're scared of doing something, it probably means you should do it.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, you guys all nailed it. All are speaking to 16-year-old me. Just believe in yourself. Everything's going to fall into place the way it's meant to, because you work hard, right? And everything you guys said, follow your passion, follow your dreams, and it will all kind of fall into place the way it should. Yeah.
Awesome. No, that was great. This was an amazing panel. Thank you to all of you ladies for not only being trailblazers within gaming and esports, but being trailblazers for women everywhere. You all have not only started companies, but you're now a part of companies that are really going to make the way for other women that are coming up in this industry to say, I will not have to go through the same things that she went through, because she broke the ceiling for me. She busted the door wide open and opened the door behind her so that I could have a place and a space within this sector. So thank you all so much for being a part of this panel. I am excited to see all of us, hopefully in the very near future, physically sometime soon. But thank you again, and super excited to see all of the things that you all have coming up in these next upcoming months. So awesome job today, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
You were awesome,
Thank you,
moderator. Thank
guys.
you,
Thank
Justice.
you.
Thank you
I
so much.
appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.